Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. Super excited to be with you here again today. And I had such great feedback on the episode I did about teamwork lessons from the African Big Five. Remember, we talked about teamwork lessons from the elephants, the lions, and the Cape buffalo. But I thought today perhaps I'd just bring this a little bit closer to home for you. As you might recall in that podcast, one of the reasons I'm really passionate about Africa is that I spent 3 months actually living in the bush, training to be a safari guide. And that's where I really learned one of the key leadership skills that I have that makes such a difference in creating high performance teams. And that is the skill of really paying attention. Because, of course, when you live out in the African bush, you need to pay attention because you don't know where the danger is coming from. And of course, as a group of people out in the bush, you need to work together as a team to know where the predators are going to be. So I remember some nights when we were out in the bush, we slept rough out on some of the waterbeds and stuff like that. And we had to have a rotation during the evening of people being on lookout for where any of the danger might come from. So for me, actually, that was a really great learnt experience of how to work effectively in a team, because if somebody in our group didn't pull their weight, then potentially everyone in our group could have been in danger. We don't have anything as bad as mountain lions in the business workplace, although I think sometimes maybe we might feel that we do, but nothing that actually is unlikely to kill us. There are lots of things happening in the business landscape that can take us out. Not paying attention to what our competitors are doing, the advent of new technology, and all the change that's going on, that unless we adapt and pivot and work with the changes that are going on in the environment, we can find ourselves left behind and effectively eaten by that predator. So as I said, today I thought I might just bring this a little bit closer to home, and let's talk about a few kind of domestic UK animals that demonstrate some great teamwork. I really thought, first of all, we might just start with the honeybees, particularly now as we're in summer and the bees are out and about. This seemed quite appropriate. Bees live in what we call swarms, and they are probably one of the most efficient teams in the natural world. And in order to pollinate the plants and produce the honey that they're so famous for, they've developed an ingenious role delegation system, one that ensures maximum efficiency. And with as many as 60,000 bees living in one hive, I think we could probably agree that's no mean feat. Trying to coordinate 60,000 people is a logistical challenge, as I'm sure we're all aware. So how do they do this? Everyone has a clearly defined role. And every beehive contains 3 different types of adult bees, and each has its own dedicated function. So the queen bee, there's one of these in every single hive, and they're the only bee in the hive that's capable of producing and laying the eggs. And the queen bee has the unique ability to control what types of bees she produces, rendering her one of the world's highly skilled HR managers. The bee there can decide whether she wants to lay an egg that's going to create a drone or a worker bee, and we'll explain both of those in a minute. But just imagine if you were the HR manager and you were able to very effortlessly decide exactly and create on the hoof exactly the type of person you need for a role. So this is why the queen bee is so magnificent at her role, because she's actually got this ability to decide what type of bees she needs in her hive. In addition to the queen bee, the drone, which are the male bees, and they're the largest bees in the hive. But their sole purpose in the colony is to fertilize the queen's eggs during her mating flight. So Without the drones, the colony would have no means of reproduction and would subsequently die out. So a really vital role that they've got in terms of keeping the longevity of the hive. And then we've got the female worker bees. So they're responsible for the daily running and maintenance of the hive. They clean and polish the cells, care for the queen. They build beeswax combs. They defend the hive and more. And there's approximately 100 worker bees for every male drone bee in the hive. And it's the queen, the drone, and the worker bees that are all very aware of how they interact together and who has what tasks and responsibilities. So through effective communication and hardwired genetics, the honeybees have established a clear hierarchical structure which allows them to operate at maximum efficiency. Really fascinating, these honeybees. So let's have a look at what some of these valuable management lessons are that we could take away and utilize in the workplace. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about segregation of duty because every bee in the hive has a specific role to play. And we've talked in previous episodes of the importance of knowing your role in the herd, knowing what your contribution and impact is within the team. Then you can stay in your zone of genius, or your lane of brilliance, do the things that you're really great at and let other people do the things that you're not so great at. So I think within organizations, this is really valuable because the larger the organization becomes, I think the more clarity we need about everyone's role and what people are doing, because this is what boosts productivity. I see a lot in organizations when there can be a lot of confusion, two people trying to do the same role or doing something similar or different versions of the same role. And that's when it becomes very ineffective. There's also something really interesting that I discovered while I was researching this for you. And this is about branding that we can learn from bees, because branding bees in the same hive, they share the same pigmentation, indentation. And it's this color code that distinguishes different colonies and enhances their defense. I'm currently going through a bit of a rebranding process at the moment, and it really reminded me of the importance of brand management, because when a company knows what your brand stands for, they know and trust you. That creates loyalty in the marketplace that can help counteract competition. So if all the bees know they're all part of one swarm of bees, they can all stay together and work effectively together. The bee population is also really good about teaching us about disaster management, because bees can feel the hormones produced by potential predators. So if the bee senses danger, they send out signals that alert other bees to prepare for an attack. So there's this kind of vibe that they put out. They've got very strong sense of smell, so they can pick up on danger coming into the environment. But then it's the way that they quickly and effortlessly effectively communicate to each other what needs to happen so that they can mitigate the risk of any danger. And I think in organizations, this is so important for us to have a disaster management recovery program in place. A lot of companies that I work with do have a disaster management process in place for what to do if technology fails. And for us right now, nowadays, in the 21st century, that's probably the biggest threat to many of our businesses. If the technology goes down, we lose all of our files, which contain all of our information. Not so many of us are using paper files nowadays. So how do we have backups and processes and know where that data is so we can easily access it to bring things back online should that happen? I know in my own experience, living out in the countryside, on the odd occasion, my internet fails. And it's just catastrophic because I can't deliver client training. And I have to have a backup plan, which means going to the local village, to a cafe, and finding somewhere to do it instead. So I do have a plan from that when the internet goes down. But I have all my files backed up in 2 or 3 different secure places. So again, God forbid, should I lose my computer? Should my home get burgled or go on fire? I have a way that I can reinstall all of that data and information that I've worked for the last decade on in my business. I don't lose any of that. I think one of the drawbacks that we need to be aware of from the bees is about the lack of autonomy, though. It's really great when we create this rigid job roles everyone knows what they're doing. But one of the challenges that I have seen this happen quite a lot is that we can diminish people's level of empowerment, their ability to think and act freely. And that can impact job satisfaction because it restricts a team member's ability to make important decisions. That said, I am seeing an alarming trend going on at the moment, which is because team members often don't have to make as many decisions, perhaps, as we did in the past. I see a lot of team members, when they're not sure what to do, the first thing they do is they jump on their phone and they call their boss and ask their boss what they could do. And I remember early on in my career, showing my age before we really had mobile phones, my boss was away on skiing holiday. We had an important publication going to print, something needed to change, and I just couldn't contact her. So I just needed to make the decision. So that empowered me at an early age in my career to just make decisions. And I really would like to encourage you to help your team members feel empowered to make decisions, because for them, it's going to be a lot more engaging and satisfying the work. And for you, it's going to stop them keep coming to you and asking you questions all the time, because you've got a finite amount of time in your day. And if you're having to spend your day just answering all your team members' questions, you're not going to get your work done, and because you're going to be doing their job all of the time. The other kind of drawback, though, that we can also see from the honeybees is this silo mentality, because everyone's working independently. The drones are working separately from the worker bees. And we want to make sure that we have a very holistic view of what's going on in the organization. We want to create this business ecosystem where everyone knows what everyone else is doing and their impact and contribution, so we can all work effectively together. And we don't have this silo mentality going on where one half of the organization doesn't know what the other half is doing. So quite a bit that we can just learn from that simple bee. And let's also have a little think about the ants. Lovely little ants. They really punch above their weight in terms of teamwork. They live in huge colonies of up to about 10 million ants, and there's over 12,000 species of them. And their colonies, should I say, consist of a queen, working females, and males. In the ant population, however, there's typically a queen, sometimes more than one. And you've only got the female workers, and the male ants are also known as drones. And each ant also has a pivotal role in the survival of the colony. Because in the ant population, the queens cannot hunt, so they have female worker ants to do this for them. And the worker ants can't reproduce, so they have the queen. And the male ants, they play a really important role in scouting out new locations to start the colony. Really interesting are the fact that ants there are so tiny, but really size doesn't matter to them. And they are well known for their ability to carry objects much larger than themselves. And in fact, a single ant is capable of lifting up to 20 times its own body weight. And I think what's really interesting when we think about ants and teamwork is that even though they can do this, they can carry so much weight, they still rely on each other to transport the food back to the colony, to the nest. Because and we see it, if you've ever looked on the floor and you look at all the ants, they're all going together, aren't they, in a trail, following each other. And that's because there's a scent laid down, and each ant is following the scent to where they want to get to. So the first ant goes out, lays the trail, finds the food, and then that leaves the trail for everyone else to follow. So that enables them to overcome obstacles together. I've seen some great pictures, and I know that there's one on one of my blogs on my website where you've actually got the ants all joined together to get over a gap or a ravine. This is how they operate in that teamwork together. Ants are also great at communicating effective, complex strategies with just 20 signals. This is one of the ways it's effective communication that they create this bridge that I've just described when they encounter a gap that must be crossed. What are some of our key takeaways from the ants? Again, they've got the clearly defined roles. I think one of the things that we can also learn about them is planning and organization. Because ants also gather food and build mounds in the summer in preparation for the winter. So during the cold season, they feed on the stored foods and hibernate. And it's this planning that helps them prepare for the uncertainties and evades the predictable risks and improves the odds of success. The other thing that the ants do really well, I think, that we can learn from them is about commitment, because each ant devotes their life to protecting the queen and the colony. And usually the queen can live up to 30 years and is rarely replaced. And if the queen does die, then the entire colony may be extinguished because other female workers do not reproduce. So I think there's something that we can learn from the ants in business about the importance of commitment and loyalty and how this can help a team thrive amid challenges and competition. But there are a couple of drawbacks as well with the ant community. Again, a lack of agility. When we're too strict when defining roles, this can cause the team to become stagnant. And for your team members to feel inspired and satisfied at work, they need to feel that they are upwardly mobile and there's opportunities for them and chances to get involved in other important decisions. So, lots of lessons we can just learn from the humble bee and the ant. And I'd really encourage you to spend some time actually out in nature, really watching how these different animals work together. What strategies and tactics do you see them using that you could effectively apply in business? Because there is so much vastness in nature and so many lessons that we can learn about this collaboration of working effectively together that we can really replicate back into the workplace. And the reason I wanted to talk today was about some of the kind of domestic things we might see here in the UK. Is I was worried that some of you might feel that the lessons I was sharing from the African bush just weren't applicable for you here today. But they absolutely are. There are so many examples, as I've said previously, of teamwork in nature. And I'd love to hear any of your thoughts. What have you seen that works really effectively in nature as a team that we could learn from? As I'm saying this and I'm closing this episode today, the one that just strikes to mind as I'm just looking out the window at the moment are the way that geese, for example, because we have a lot of Canadian geese that often spend time here on the farm, hanging out by the lake in the field where my horses are. But whenever I'm watching these Canadian geese take on and off, they form that inverted V with one at the front and everyone else coming off in that V shape. And again, that's a great example of teamwork, one of them taking the lead and everything else is following behind in the slipstream. But then what they realize is that they rotate that round. There's not one geese at the front the whole time. That leadership is shared, and we've talked a lot about shared leadership previously, so that another goose goes to the front and leads, who's got a bit more energy. The one who has been at the front tucks back into the slipstream and carries on. And I just wish that we could get organizations working in this collaborative way with this more effective teamwork, because teamwork is this competitive superpower. I think it can make such a massive difference in business if we just accessed and harnessed it to its true potential. So have another great week. Let me know if there's anything particularly that you'd like me to talk about on the area of teamwork. And I'd love to hear any stories of where you've seen great examples in teamwork. Okay, until next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?